Okay, we should be live. Hello, hello. Hello for everyone joining us. Let me just make sure that we're actually live because that would be embarrassing. Um, so yeah, let us know if you could hear us okay first, and that if you're seeing this all right. Let me see.
There's already people here chatting. How
Oh,
exciting.
yeah. Okay, perfect. So it seems like you guys can see us all right. So hello to everybody joining us. This is going to be the book troop live show for the month of October, where we read The Last House on Needless Street. That's cool that we have the same cover.
Yeah, I like this. Actually, I don't know if I like this one better than the other one.
Yeah, I know. They're both kind of like,
They're both
yeah,
okay.
yeah, they're both alright. But yeah, this is The Last House on Needless Street, and this is the wonderful Kayla over from Books and Lala. You probably know her channel. I do talk about her quite a lot on my channel. She's one of my favorite creators here on YouTube. So yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining me on this live stream. Um, I do have Kayla's channel linked down below. If you're not familiar with her channels, you can go and check it out and subscribe. And yeah, why don't you just like introduce yourself maybe for anybody who doesn't know your channel and kind of like talk about what you read and you know.
Oh my god, what I read. Oh
Yeah,
no.
what do you read?
Okay, hi, I'm Kayla. You already said that. I like to do like weird challenge videos on my channel. I do a lot of vlogs. I pick my TBR in obscure ways.
Yes.
I used to read a lot more thrillers and horror, and then I didn't for a bit, and now I'm back on my thriller shit, as I like to say.
Yes.
Um, and I'm just like, I'm so excited to be here because I was just telling Gabby that, like, I'm just going to link to this live show anytime I ever want to talk about this book because this is a very difficult one to discuss. And I don't know how to really do that, like in a wrap up or in a vlog. So it's all going to be here. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to link this forever.
Yes. Very well said. I agree. Oh my gosh. Hi. We have so many people here. I see Meg in the chat and I see McKay. It's so exciting. Hello to everybody joining us. Yeah, so just to start this off, I wanted to ask anybody who's watching, maybe if you want to put a green heart in the or a green emoji heart in the comments if you've read the book, just so we can get an idea of who's here because they've read the book, so we know if we should put off on spoilers for a little bit. Because I feel like it's really hard to discuss this book without talking about spoilers. Like, how do you even? But yeah, so green heart if you have read the book, and then maybe black heart if you have not read the book yet, just so I can get a visual on who's here because they read it. And then maybe while they do that, would you want to give like a brief description of like what this book is about?
Yeah, sure.
I
I love
don't.
all the green hearts. It makes me so excited.
I know. Yeah, there
Your
are so
book club
many.
is popping. They're really like participating, and that's awesome.
It's so
Since
cool.
actually, let's promote something really quick. Since you just mentioned Meg, you guys should go check out her channel if you want to see me and Gabby compete head to head
Yes.
in a bookish competition. You should go.
I know. I was like, how perfect of timing was that got posted
Yeah.
yesterday? So I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much like so much stuff happening lately.
I know. Okay, so oh my god, I just learned how to pronounce this author's name. Catriona. No, wait, Catriona. Catriona Ward. The Last House on Needless Street. It is about a man named Ted who is lonely and struggling with his mental health, with drinking, with social interactions, and he lives in this boarded up house at the end of a dead end street. And there's also a storyline going on at the same time of a girl whose sister went missing when they were younger, and she is looking for the person responsible, and perhaps that is Ted, and he was like a suspect. You learn in the first like couple pages in the disappearance of that little girl. And there's also like some other like missing people. Like I think it says in the synopsis that there's, or it doesn't say it here, but like the initial pitch is like there's a serial killer, there's a man, there's a missing girl, like something like that.
Yeah. I know that was an interesting pitch because when I first chose this book, I only like picked it off of the like that first initial pitch that you saw because it was so interesting. It was just like a serial killer, a house at the end of the street, and like something's going on, and I was like, whoa, like what? It was just so vague and like ominous. So
Yeah, it's, I would call it like uh if you guys haven't read it, I like, this isn't the type of book that you can hear a review for and then still enjoy. I really think you have
yeah,
to go in knowing nothing. But
yeah,
to set your expectations correct, I don't I wouldn't personally call this a horror.
Yeah.
I would call it more of like a gothic thriller. And I think that is how the author, anytime I've seen her discuss it, she calls it a gothic thriller,
That's
just to put it
interesting.
out there.
Yeah. I know. I struggle with like what genre this book fits under because like I agree. I don't think it was really a horror either. Like in yeah, I don't know. Like there were some moments that were kind of like eerie that could feel like it could fit under the, like the horror umbrella, but for the most part, like most of the story does not feel very like a horror to me. So yeah, that's really interesting that you said that. I was wondering, did you listen to the audiobook for this at all?
I did.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say the audiobook is fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like recommend if you have not read this book yet, to anybody, like I would definitely check out the audiobook because I think it really increased my reading experience for sure. Like I think the audiobook is really great, because the narrator is pretty incredible in that audiobook.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I think it's enjoyable both ways. I did switch back and forth.
mhm.
And sometimes I find that books like this that are written in like kind of a weird writing style, they can
Yeah,
almost be ruined by the audiobook because the audiobook like gives away certain things,
true.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But this one, the audiobook was fantastic.
yeah, definitely agree. All right, so now I'm curious. I would like everybody who has read it to put their ratings in the chat. If you've rated this book out of 5 stars, I'm curious to know what you rated it because I honestly am kind of still struggling with my rating. I haven't really fully even decided what I would want to rate this book yet. I read it like a week and a half ago, and I'm still kind of like on edge of like I don't really know how I feel about it. So I'd love to know if you do have a rating, how you feel about it. What was your rating?
I finished it yesterday and I had the exact same thoughts when I
Yeah,
finished it. I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to rate this. And so I've been sitting on it for the last like 12 hours.
yeah.
I love that there's every single rating. That's exactly
I
what I
know.
expected.
I know. We're just
I
like,
think you could hate it, you can love it, and you can feel kind of in the middle. Um, I was right in the middle. I ended up giving it 3 stars,
okay, yeah,
maybe like a 3.5, because like I'm not mad at the book,
yeah,
um, but I totally get how this is some people's like favorite book of the year. I absolutely understand it, and
yeah.
I totally get it. And the people who absolutely hate it, I completely understand.
Yeah, I agree. Like I can definitely see this going either way, you know, like I agree. Um yeah, I know. I feel like I'm kind of somewhere between like a 3.5 and a 4 stars as well. I think I did enjoy it like slightly more than the people who disliked it a lot, but I don't think I loved it the same way that everybody else who like absolutely loved it did. Um but I am glad though to see that it does seem to be the most well loved book for my book trip so far for
Oh,
my book.
really?
Yeah, it seems like this is the one that's getting the most praise. I mean, I don't know if you know for my book club, I've been having some really shitty luck this whole year,
Oh
like
no.
picking so many books that are like really low rated. So I'm happy to see that it does seem like mostly everyone's enjoying this book the most.
Okay,
Out
wait.
of all the
Remind me of your last couple picks for the book trip.
I've had okay, so last month was 56 days, which ended
Uh-huh.
up being just fine. And then before that, I'm like looking. It was the Taking of Jake Livingston. I
Yeah.
had I had Survive the Night, which,
Oh yeah.
didn't work out. And I don't know, just like a bunch of like every value break, the wife
Oh
upstairs, the other
yeah.
black girl, the burning girls, like I don't know. But the burning girls is probably my other favorite that I've done so far. But
I wonder if that one's going to be in the Goodreads choice words for horror. I've been
I know the
because I
burning
can't decide
girls.
if that's horror or thriller.
I know. I felt like it was more of a thriller when I read it, but I
Mm.
guess I was just expecting more of a thriller, so I went in a little biased, I guess, with that. But yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I've seen that one too getting categorized as like more horror recently, so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Um, so yeah, okay. So I guess let me see. I did have some questions that were more like spoiler free that we could still discuss without jumping immediately into spoilers since we have some friends here who haven't read it yet. But I was wondering, have you read any other books from this author?
Oh my god, I didn't even know she had other books.
I know. I just checked on Goodreads because I was like, oh, she has like two. I think she has two other books published, and then she announced one for 2022. But I
I
haven't
did see
heard.
that one. I was
Yeah,
That's funny. I was going to ask you if you were going to pick up her upcoming one.
yeah.
The cover freaks me out.
I know. Let me try to see what her other books are called. I think it's like she has a book called Raw Blood, and then one called Little Eve. They
Yikes.
published in like 2015 and 2018. Yeah, I was just gonna ask like if you had like how they compared, or if you haven't, then like would you want to pick up this author's books in the future?
Yeah, I haven't, but I do think I'm going to pick up Sundial, the 2022 one.
Yeah, I was gonna say that looks interesting.
I'm down to give her another go. Oh God, Raw Blood. That does not sound okay.
Right. Oh my
This did
gosh.
feel like a debut. Like it
No,
felt
it did.
like an experimental type of storytelling style.
Yeah. I know. I think this author, like something that I do appreciate about this book is that this author is definitely willing to like take some risks with this book for sure. Because I think like I mean one thing I can say is that this is definitely unlike anything that I've ever read before. And like the whole story, I was just really confused. Like I personally did not see where any of it was going. So I was just really surprised, I guess, by the whole thing. But
Yeah, you have
yeah.
to be down to be like confused and lost. If
Yeah.
that's not something you enjoy, like don't do it.
Yeah, I know because I definitely think most of this book is like a slow burn for sure. Like it takes a long time for things to really like pick up and get interesting. But
I really like the pace, I will say, like, but I'm somebody who like I really enjoy not knowing what's going on. Like I'm down to have that be 90% of the book as long
yeah.
as it has a good payoff. So I like being confused, I like being lost.
hmm
The payoff for me was fine.
Yeah.
It was good. Like I've read this type of reveal before. I haven't read a book quite like this, but I've read this type of story before.
hmm
So it wasn't like the most shocking thing in the world. And I don't think it's supposed to be, but we can get into that more with.
Yeah. I know. I was gonna say I don't know if I have anything else to talk about that's non-spoilery. If you can think of anything, because I'm like I kind of just want to jump right into the spoilers because I feel like there is a lot to talk about like regarding spoilers. Um, that's interesting that Justin said that. Like I was kind of expecting weirdness since this is published from a smaller imprint. Like that's interesting because I do wonder if authors can get away from the more like traditional things if they're able to publish with like a smaller imprint. Isn't this?
I
This
think
is
that's true. It's Tor.
yeah.
But it's Tor Nightfire, which don't ask me what that actually means. Like I don't
I know. I
understand
don't know that
anything about
either.
publishing.
Yeah. I don't know the first day. Oh my gosh! I just noticed Molly's here. I felt like I got whiplash reading. Honestly,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think especially if this is your first time reading something like this, like that's when I really understand the 5 stars. Because if you
yeah,
haven't had this happen to you, this is one of
yeah.
my favorite feelings of a book.
hmm
Um, so if this is your first time experiencing that, like I'm so happy for you.
Yes, agreed. Okay, yeah, it looks like everybody's down for spoilers. So I'm so sorry if you're here, if you haven't read the book yet and you don't want to be spoiled. I think we're going to jump into some spoilers now just because there's so much to discuss spoiler-wise with this book. So I just want to jump right into it. So yeah, if you haven't read it, this is your final warning. We're going to jump into spoilers. Um,
But come
okay,
back later
so
and leave your thoughts in the comments.
right, yeah, I'll be very curious to know if we've convinced you at all to maybe read this. Then yeah, I would love to know your thoughts afterwards. So yeah, so I guess my first like spoilery kind of question would be who was your favorite point of view to read from in this book? Because we do get like Ted's point of view, we get Dee's point of view, and then we get the cat's point of view, which was interesting.
I think a lot of people, like I browsed through the reviews quickly this morning, and the consensus seems to be that everybody who didn't like the book really didn't like the cat POV. And I thought the
Interesting.
cat POV was so fun. Like
Yeah.
I'm also just like down for a weird perspective. So um I thought it was strange. I'm trying to remember if I knew going into it that it was a cat's POV. I think I knew
No.
that there was a cat and there was a talking cat, but I don't think that I knew it was a perspective. And so while I was reading it, I mean, for the first like third of this book, I was like, I literally don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
None of this is making any sense. Like,
Yeah.
is this cat really a cat? I think I convinced myself pretty quickly that um, that Lauren was a ghost and that the
Mhm.
cat was really a cat. So like
Yeah.
I was kind of in the right like mindset, but I wasn't on the right page.
That's interesting. I know, I agree that the cat being religious was pretty funny. Like I thought that was like a really like unique character trait for the cat to have. Yeah, I do agree that I actually really enjoyed the cat's point of view. Like I'm not even a cat person, but I just thought it was like really funny and like a cool thing for the story to have because like yeah, I don't think I've ever I don't think I've ever read a book that had a cat point of view in it, to be honest. Like I can't think of anything else. So um
It's funny that somebody just recommended Hollow Kingdom because I was gonna I haven't read this
Oh.
yet, but I just pulled it in because I knew we'd probably talk about like books that you might recommend. And I am
Mhm.
interested in this because I think it's from a crow's perspective, is the whole thing.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's the only thing that came to mind when I was thinking of other animal POVs for
Yeah.
adults. Because like obviously kids books, like there's like I don't know, Animal Farm or like Watership Down.
Mhm.
But I think I would be interested in reading another animal perspective.
I
Now I'm
know.
wondering if Pearl does that. Do you think Pearl does that?
Pearl does. Yeah, I read Pearl. It does do that. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it does. It's not like a huge part of the book, but there are a few chapters from Pearl's point of view.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. This is a good point from Justin. Like the cat's point of view really comes alive in the audiobook because I'm wondering if people who didn't enjoy the cat's point of view, if they only read it physically, because I know, like, I don't really know how I would feel about the cat's point of view if I only read the book physically, but because of the audiobook, oh my god, like the meowing that this narrator was doing,
Yeah.
it was so entertaining. Like, I don't know, I thought the audiobook was so well done, and I think part of the thing that spoiled me for, well, not spoiled me, but like hinted at what was coming was the fact that there was only one narrator on the audiobook, and somebody pointed it out to me because I said, "Oh, there's already multiple narrators" when I listened to the first chapter because I mentioned it in a triad chapter, and then somebody was like, "No, it's all one narrator and he's just doing different voices." And then in my head, I was like, "Wait, why is he narrating the, the young girls or whatever, or D's, like, I don't know." I was just like, "Wait, what?"
Oh, that's true. I actually didn't. I didn't make the connection that it was only one narrator. I guess I'm also listening to it like sped up significantly
Yeah,
when I
same.
listen to
I know.
audiobooks, so I don't think I really made the connection that it was him. So that's even more impressive.
Oh, yeah, that's
Um,
interesting. Molly said she read it only physically and still loved Olivia, so that's cool.
okay, good.
Um,
I started out with the audiobook. Like the first third of it was by audio. And then
mhm,
since I was confused, I thought maybe it was because of the audiobook. So I picked it up physically.
I
But
see.
then it was like the same experience. It was just as good. And so then I returned to the audiobook for the end. The author's note is really good too. If you guys somehow have like finished the book but haven't listened to that or heard
Mhm.
or read that, it's really, I think it's important to the story.
Yeah. I know. I do think it's interesting because I think, like, since I don't really know like what I would categorize this book as, like, genre wise, I think it's interesting because Dee's chapters felt the most like thriller kind of chapters to me out of
Mm-hmm.
this whole story. But because her chapters feel like such a small part of the story, like, I don't know, I feel like Dee wasn't even introduced in the book until like nearly 100 pages in or so, and then like I feel like most of the story was about, like Ted and then the cat and then Lauren. And so I feel like that's why I struggle with like what to call this book because it's like these chapters do feel pretty thrillery to me, but like the rest of it just like doesn't. I don't know, like the rest of it just feels, it's like kind of mysterious, I guess. But
Yeah, it did have mystery vibes. Like it kind of felt like Sadie,
mhm.
where it's like a girl trying to get justice for her sister.
Yeah.
I did enjoy I did enjoy her perspective when like going through the woods and like trying to find out what really happened. I was enjoying her perspective more at that point in the book than anyone else's.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, that's interesting. Psychological thriller, I guess that would work for this. Interesting. I wanted to ask too, how did your feelings about Ted as a character change throughout the book? Because when it was like introduced right away that like he was a suspect for like, kidnapping this young girl or whatever, were you immediately like, oh, like red flags with him, and then maybe if you didn't like him at the start, and then like you slowly began to change your feelings about him as a character, or
That's tough because like I really wanted to trust the author because like right
Mhm.
off the bat she tells us pretty early on that Ted is not responsible for that girl who went
Uh-huh.
missing. That's why like I think there are so many clues at the beginning. Like there's a reference to like Russian nesting dolls and like this idea of like people inside other people and like I
Mhm.
I think that the book does a good job of hinting towards certain things and not leaving it to be one like gratuitous plot twist, which I really respect.
Mhm.
And because I saw her doing that, I started to trust her as an author rather
Mhm.
than assuming that she was gonna like, pull the rug out from under us and do something like ridiculous. So I
Yeah.
pretty much trusted her from the beginning, and I was like, okay, well, she's obviously writing this character who is struggling with all of these things. So I was pretty on board with Ted not being a bad guy from pretty early on. I was like, he obviously has endured some traumas, which
Mhm.
obviously get explored as we go through the book. But I, I pretty early on was just like, this is just a sad story of like a sad man.
Mm-hmm.
Because I assumed really early on that Lauren wasn't real.
Yeah.
So I was on the wavelength of like, Ted is Ted's just been through a lot, um, and Lauren's not real. I didn't know if I thought that he was lying and he was responsible for like Lulu going missing or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was pretty sure he was fine.
Yeah, I know this one was interesting because I think I went into it thinking it was going to be more like of the average kind of thriller that I read. So I was like immediately suspicious of Ted for some
Mm-hmm.
reason. I was just like thinking like no, there's no way, and I was thinking like the twist was that the little girl was the girl that went missing, but I was like that would be so obvious. Like that's
Yeah,
almost like
it was too
implied.
easy.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, it's got to be something else. I was like trying to think, but I was like, okay, D seems to be pretty certain that like he's responsible, and so I was like, okay, I was just really curious and invested in her to like see where it was going, you know, because I was like thinking like, oh my god, if that is her sister, like how awful like would that be, you know? So I was just like, I don't know. Like I agree with Mike. I was thinking at first like he was probably a serial killer or something was going on because I thought it was just gonna be like I don't know. I feel like I've read so many thrillers where I just get immediately suspicious of like everyone.
For sure.
But that's interesting. Yeah, like it seems like a lot of people did feel sympathy for Ted like right away and felt like he wasn't responsible.
I
So
don't know what like my theory really was.
mhm.
Like if not Ted, like who took Lulu and what happened to Lulu. I don't think I
Yeah,
really had a theory about that, but assuming that she was a ghost, I think that I kind of thought that um, she died and maybe like Ted was protecting her spirit, or like
hmm,
maybe there were more spirits that we were going to get to meet throughout the book, that he was like, because I went into like this wasn't speculative at all, and I thought this was
yeah,
going to be pure speculative. I thought it was going to be full on house full of spirits. So I was like,
yeah.
okay, we met Lauren, that's the little girl, it's her ghost, now where's the other ghost? And as the book went on and we didn't get any more spirits, I was like, okay, something else is happening. So I didn't predict the twist that the cat was Lauren and that the cat and Lauren were Ted. I
Yeah.
definitely didn't catch on to that. So it was still a good like surprise for me, even though I knew that Lauren wasn't alive because
Hmm.
there was no way.
Yeah. I know. I didn't pick up on it either. Like I actually like didn't even like as soon as it was revealed that the cat and Lauren were the same person, I still didn't put together that Ted was also involved because I was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Then I was like, then it's gonna be a story about how they're escaping from Ted, and like I was like all on board with this thing, and then it was just like, oh my gosh, as soon as it said like D saw Ted on the ground like after he was like stabbed or whatever, right? And then she heard him speak in like Lauren's voice, and I was like, wait, what? Like I was just like, oh my gosh, like I did not see it coming at all, and I'm kind of mad about it because I feel like if I really thought about it, I probably maybe would have because it was just hinted at
Yeah.
so much.
This is the type of book that if you read a second time, I'm sure you see like so
Yeah.
much of it.
I know I was even looking back through my notes and I was like, oh my gosh, like things that didn't make sense to me before all of a sudden were making sense. Like when he would go to his therapist and he would like describe Lauren's symptoms to get medication for
Mm-hmm.
Lauren. I was like, oh, okay, like that makes a lot more sense now. And my one friend was saying, I was talking about this book with my friend, and he was saying that he realized the twist when it was the scene when he took Lauren to the mall. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was reading back on that scene, and he was just saying how he took Lauren to the mall to like get the pair of leggings or whatever, and then he was asking the store, like the women that were working in the store, for like a certain size for his like daughter to try on, and he said the
They
women in the
laughed
store
or
were like, yeah,
something.
they were like laughing, and I was like, okay, the first time reading this, I was like, this doesn't make sense, like what is going on? And then afterwards, it's like he realized like it's because he's going on and trying on these like small leggings in the dressing room or whatever. So I was like, oh my gosh, like there's just so much. Yeah, I feel like if you read this book a second time, it would make a lot more sense the second time around.
But I think that is a really important part of this. Like, there's obviously a discussion to be had here about using mental illness as like a twist,
Yeah.
um, and people like respecting that or taking issue with that. Either way, it's totally fine. Um, but like, what I think is really like respectful and empathetic shows like the empathy that the author had is that she didn't use it as just like this out of the blue plot twist. It wasn't in the last like 10 pages that she was
Yeah.
like, oh, he has a whole different like personality. who
Mhm.
is doing all of these other things. It was like there are clues and there are little references, and I feel like that makes it like a respectful kind of twist.
Yeah, I agree. I know because that's why I kind of like struggled with this when I first read the twist because I was like, ooh, like I don't know if I love that, because it did seem kind of like I don't know because I know like people do have a lot of feelings about like with mental illnesses being used as plot twists, and honestly like I don't really know how I feel about it completely to be honest, but I do agree that after reading that author's note, it felt like it was done in a very like truthful like way to her, and it seems like she did do a lot of research on this. I actually had somebody reach out to me on Instagram and they were saying that they felt like they were so happy that this book exists because it takes away the like negative stigmas that people with this disorder can be violent, which I
Mhm.
think is a really great thing. And that they're saying that they're really happy that more mainstream books like this will include this representation and kind of take away from the fact that because it's like such a stigma that like this disorder will make people be violent or something like that, or like if they're or like they're not safe or something. And she was saying how she likes that this author's note and this book shows that these people aren't violent people, and it's almost like an anti-horror novel, because it's revealed like, oh, he's actually just the victim, really, of like his life circumstance. I mean, because his mom was like so awful, to him, and like learning all of that was just like so shocking.
That's great that they reached out and said that. I think that we as readers like get really protective, and I think that's great.
Hmm.
And for so long, so much media continues to stigmatize mental illness.
Hmm.
So I feel like a lot of readers with this book might immediately be defensive and be like, "You can't use mental health as a plot twist ever. Like that's just not okay. It doesn't make me
Yeah.
feel good." And I think you're justified in that. But unless you're somebody with DID who's reading this, I think like
Hmm.
you need to look at people's reviews, because I've seen the 3 reviews that I found. One of them was a video review. If you guys want to check it out, it's by the Chaotic Little Book Corner. She
Hmm.
has DID and she talked about how she feels about the representation and how much she enjoyed the book.
Hmm.
My perspective on it is that if you're in any type of scenario that you are writing about a group of people that you do not belong to, you should feel a sense of responsibility to, if you're writing a book about a group, it needs to be for that group.
Hmm.
So the representation needs to be respected, and you need to like have your sensitivity readers or whatever, and they
Yeah.
need to be able to read that book and enjoy it. If you're writing a
Hmm.
book about a character and you're just doing all of this terrible shit to that character, and like that's not for that group of people then, and that's not right in my opinion.
Yeah.
So from the author's note, I get the vibe that she really took her time with it and she met with the people that she needed to, and enough people read it and kind of signed off on it. Obviously, no group of people is a monolith and everyone's going to
Hmm.
have their own perspective, and that's totally fine. But I do like how it was handled in here. As somebody who obviously, like, I am not speaking from a perspective
Yeah.
with DID, so I can't really speak on it. But I do feel like the way it was handled is better than 90% of mental illness representation that I've read before.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, like and this too, like I've gotten tired of authors using mental illness as plot twists, but this author did it in a way that I haven't really read before, and her note showed how thoughtful she was about the use. And that's what I think too. I saw another comment that was saying, in the afterword, she said that shedding light on people with DID is the book's purpose. So I do think that she wrote this with like really good intentions, and she wanted to like spread awareness about this, and also like um, de-villainize the people that have this illness, or at least make us understand more. Because I do think this book did teach me like a lot about. Because I honestly don't know a whole lot about this disorder, but I do think this book like made me really curious to learn more about it and like definitely have more sympathy.
There's a
Um,
lot of really good YouTube channels that I've been following for, like, going into this book not knowing it was about DID, and then
mhm,
having that reveal, and having like my context of like I watch quite a few channels that discuss DID.
mhm,
So I thought it was really interesting. The thing about this also is though, like, I think we I think if you're reading a book about, again, a group of people that the author does not belong to, I think it's on us as readers to also make sure that we're consuming like own voices books.
yeah,
So I think that we should also just like make an effort to try to find some authors who've also written fiction about DID, because I've never really seen it. I've never heard anybody
Yeah.
talk about anything like that. So I'm going to look into that in the future, knowing now that that's the representation in it.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that. Um, okay, let me see what I did see we got a question about like how did you feel about Ted's therapist throughout this book? Um, because I thought his therapist was so frustrating because it was like at first it was like you thought like the therapist was genuinely like there for him, you know, and like being a good therapist, but then it's kind of like as the book goes on, he just kind of like gets really confrontational with Ted in a way, and he's like, I know that your daughter isn't real, and like he wants to like write a book about Ted, and I was just like, what the heck?
I think I, if I'm really getting into the nitty gritty of why I didn't give it a full 5-star or even 4-star, is actually like has a lot to do with the therapist storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think it was, I don't know, there's so much that's powerful in the book itself that I don't think we needed that other plot twist. And
Yeah.
I know that like the mental health stuff isn't technically a plot twist. Like I wouldn't call it a plot twist because it was slowly revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like that is the one real plot twist of the story. Besides, also like his mom being the one who was like murdering all
Yeah.
those children, which like what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Um, I feel like the therapist was like utilized wrong. I don't know that we needed, because I don't think I even fully understand. Like he was giving him medication that caused hallucinations. So like were there parts of the book that were his hallucinations as opposed to his alters?
I
Or like
know.
what, I think it messed up some of my perspective on the entire story.
Yeah, I know, that's interesting. I'm not totally sure. And I was wondering this too because I think it was like implied or something that the therapist like died at the end, but I was also confused on that because I was like, wait, what? Like it was like after his final conversation with Ted, and then it was like something I can't remember like how the chapter ended, but I was like, wait, what? Like did he die? Um but I did think there was like an interesting discussion too about how because like it was like the therapist was saying that he needed to put him on a different medication, and then Ted was saying something like he couldn't afford that specific medication, and I was like, I think that's like a really interesting discussion too about how like the problem with our society about how people
True.
that need certain medications can't afford them, and how it sucks that like so many people have to choose between being able to afford certain things and then getting the medications that they need. Like I think that was like hinting at another really interesting conversation.
That's so true. It's interesting that everyone like we're talking about how confusing the book was at the beginning, but I'm actually more confused by the end. Like there were
Right.
a couple different things that I was like, wait, what? Like
Yeah.
even with his mom, I grapple with like I don't think we should have had more scenes with his mother because
Uh-huh.
that would have just been like trauma, 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 and like that's not
Yeah.
necessary. We get the idea that she's a terrible person, but I
Yeah.
still like don't really get it. Like how did she take that girl out of the water? Like what did she do with her?
I know.
How did that happen so quickly? What did she do? Like, not what did she do with these children that she like killed, but like, when was she doing that? Like, how was she doing all of that without
I
anybody
know.
knowing? And
Yeah.
like, I don't think we needed the chapters of like her doing the heinous crimes, but I don't think I get it.
Yeah. I know, I agree. It was kind of confusing and hard to follow. Like when we finally got Dee's point of view at the end of the book talking about like specifically what happened on the day that her sister went missing. I was like, yeah, I had difficulty too with the timeline of like, okay, so she like her sister like hurt herself and then she was there and then like Dee and the other guy or whatever left, and then yeah, like it seemed like a really hard to follow timeline of like how she was able to abduct this girl so quickly. And there was like mention too because they were saying like they didn't think it was her because the mother only kidnapped little boys or something, right? So it was
Yeah,
like,
and thought that Laura was a boy.
yeah, but I'm like, wasn't she watching them in order to like be able to pull this off so quickly? And I'm like, wouldn't she have realized? Like, I don't know. It's kind of strange. Yeah, I don't understand the whole part.
Yeah, I also don't know how to feel about um, Lauren. Sorry, let me get my names right in my head. No, D. I don't know how I feel about D being an unreliable narrator because like
Yeah,
Ted is our unreliable narrator, kind of you could say, and I don't know how I feel about there being an entirely another unreliable narrator who like tells us the story of the day her sister went missing, and then we find out like that's just not true at all. And I get it, like I get it because it's trauma, and the whole book is about trauma and how people survive trauma and the things that your mind does to like protect yourself.
Yeah.
But it's just looking back on it, it bums me out a little bit that like every single perspective in the book was unreliable. All of them. There wasn't like one person that we could really rely on.
Yeah.
And so I don't look back on it and think like it was amazing.
That's really interesting. This one comment says, I liked that D was unreliable. I think the point is that we make assumptions about everyone and no one is exactly what we think they are. It's really interesting. Yeah, I know. I don't know how I feel about Dee's character. Like, I don't know. Like, her chapters, I guess, just weren't as interesting to me as Ted's were, just because I was so invested in, like, what was going on with Ted that I just, like, I felt like I was, like, wanting to get through Dee's chapters faster because I guess because they did feel more like the standard thriller to me of, like, someone trying to track down, like, you know, what was going on. But
yeah, and I guess we needed that. Like, we needed the therapist twist, we needed the D twist, because the point, in my opinion, is that you're supposed to understand the Ted twist. So, like, I recognize the reasoning for the other plot twists, but I think it could have been. I think my problem is I don't know who to recommend this to.
Yeah.
I can't recommend this to people who love unreliable narrators because pitching it that way is going to spoil it. I can't recommend it to like big horror fans because I don't think it's a horror book. I can't recommend it for like, it's a sad trauma based story, but I can't really recommend it in that sense either because there's too many like wild plot twists in it for it to be for that niche.
Yeah.
It's a weird one
to
talk about.
I agree. And that's why it's really hard to talk about this book without spoilers at all, because I feel like once you know the spoiler, then it's like really hard to like even talk about this book like generally.
Okay.
I wanted to show this comment because I thought it was pretty interesting. She said, "What if the therapist was an alter and the medication was old medicine his mom used to give him?" Because that would be
God.
Yeah. That would be something. I didn't really consider that, to be honest.
The thing about this book is like you can come up with any idea that you want and just make it true. Like if you want the therapist to be an alter, like you can say that and it can be true in your mind.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the book telling you that's absolutely not a fact.
I know Mickey had a good point too. He said, I interpreted it as this being a commentary on how some therapists reduce patients as experiments and dehumanize them just so they can publish a paper and get clout. Like, I agree. I think that was the message that it was trying to go for in this book with like the therapist thing going on.
Yeah, but then it's tough because does that demonize therapy?
I know. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I mean. Like the message there is confusing. Like, I don't know if we're supposed to take something from that.
Yeah, like are people going to finish the book and be like, well, I shouldn't be a therapist now?
yeah, I know. I don't know. Yeah, same. When we found out that D killed the birds, my mouth dropped open. Same. I was like,
oh, fuck.
I was like, this is necessary.
I think the saddest scene was when his mom, oh my God, when his mom made him leave the cat in the woods. I was like,
I know.
No. I was like, absolutely not.
Ugh.
That was so sad. I was like tearing up. I was listening to the audiobook and I was like, I don't like it.
I know. Yeah. I agree. Like there were some moments in this book that I was just like, what the heck? Like the whole thing too with him like burying the gods or what, like when all that was talked about, I was like so confused at first because I was like, okay, like my initial thought was that it was like other victims or something. Because I was thinking from the start, like if Ted's like a serial killer, then I was like he kidnapped this girl Lauren, and then he has like these other bodies or something. And so that's where I was thinking that was going. And then like with it being related to like his mom and like it was just like her belongings, right? Like it ended up being that. And like she had left him a note or something after she like killed herself that said like bury these in, or I don't know, and then he would bury the gods. Like I don't know, that was also kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah, it was weird. And then him like the scene of him watching his mom like take the suitcase out to the woods.
Yeah,
I didn't like that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Mika, can we talk about the French accent of the mom on the audiobook?
Oh yeah,
that's what I mean. Like the audiobook was just like, wow, like he was doing it all.
Yeah, that was wild. I remember listening to that whole portion and I was like, why are we learning? I thought that one was too long. She was like telling a story about her past growing up, and I was like, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah, I
I was
know.
really glad there was not more of that. I was worried we were going to start to get way more of the mom's like life history, and I was like, I'm not liking this.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it was just enough. Like it was enough to like learn about how she was responsible for everything without it being like just way too much. Um, right. And then yeah, I guess my like last question would just be like if you had to compare this book to another like book or movie or TV show with similar vibes, like do you have anything? Because I ask this in every live show, but I also like really struggle with this one because like you said, it's kind of like hard to recommend this and hard to know like what exactly it is, and unless it's like spoilery, it's really hard to
I think
recommend.
I was just watching an interview with the author, and she was talking about how like she doesn't even know a book that she could recommend because like her
Yeah.
publisher was like, we need to pitch this book, so like what would you say is like a good comp title? And she was like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But she did talk about how she recommends Kelly Link, who writes short stories, as somebody who like has similar vibes that are like gothic and kind of strange. So I would recommend Kelly Link. I've read some of her short stories. I think the two books that came to mind are just ones that I would recommend if you want something that's like you don't really know what's happening and the writing is just strange and you know that something is off
Uh-huh.
and the reveals are like slowly satisfying. So that would be like pretty like stereotypical answers, Fight Club and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I feel like we've
Yeah.
recommended I'm Thinking of Ending Things for like so many different books. We're like, if you like the vibes here, read this.
Yeah. I
I
mean
think that
that
would
is
be
like the
that.
go-to like what the fuck is happening in this book kind of book, you know?
It's hard because like I do have some titles that are overtly about like um uh narrators who aren't the real narrator,
Hmm.
but I've never like talked about them in that capacity. So I would just be so scared to even mention them because it would be such a spoiler.
Yeah. That's
But
what
I
I
would
mean. It is
it's
hard to
always
like,
questionable.
yeah. Also, this comment movie Split reminds me of this book. I was gonna say this, but also with Split, like I don't know if the representation is done well in Split or not. Like I'm just not
Split is one of like the most controversial like the DID community has talked about Split
really.
and like how nobody should be watching Split, nobody should be talking about Split, like don't
Oh, okay.
like absolutely not.
I know. I was unsure because I was like, I mean, with the way,
It has the right vibes, that's
yeah,
true,
yeah,
but it's not something that you should read if you're looking for an accurate
yeah,
representation
yeah,
or a representation that people feel good about.
yeah,
I do agree with Bunny. Nikki just said Bunny.
yeah,
I think Bunny is one that's just like weird.
yeah.
So like it comes to mind obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yes, with Justin too. This thing between us. I just read this book too, and I would agree. It's kind of like a kind of a similar vibe in a way. It's just like a horror where you're just kind of like, yeah, like what is happening.
Don't
Um,
mind me while I Google it.
yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, I do think it's hard to I do think it's hard to recommend something similar without spoiling both things. Um, so yeah, interesting. Well, um, this was a really interesting discussion about like I do feel like the one thing with this book is that it is a really great book to discuss because I do feel like there's so much going on in this story and so much going on to discuss.
Yeah,
I
sometimes
think
with our
that's
book club picks, it's like that was so
right.
boring. There's nothing to talk about. This actually had like some really interesting things to spark a discussion. So I'm so glad
Yeah,
we got to do. I'm really glad we got to do this because now I don't have to talk about it in a wrap
right.
up.
I know. I'm like I don't. Yeah, I don't know how to talk about this book casually. So I'm glad that we'll just like be able to link this and be like, this is my thoughts. This is how I feel about it. I know I'm kind of like confused because I was hoping to pick something kind of more like horror for the month of October
Yeah,
for the book club, and then with this, I'm like, this is like it literally feels like an anti-horror book in a way. It's like it's more of a like psychological thriller vibe, but you know, it's fine. Um, Nikki did ask what is next month's pick again, and False Witness by Karen Slaughter is next month's pick,
oh,
which like
yeah.
pray for me. Oh my god, it's gonna be it's
Is
gonna
it
be
long?
it's like it's almost I think it's almost 500 pages. But I'm just worried with like Karen Slaughter, like she's just known for
Yeah, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna be very graphically violent, I'm sure, and I need to be ready for it, you know. So yeah, that is next month. So what are you reading for October, November for your book club?
Oh, for October, it's also interestingly like a horror selection. My
Oh,
Heart is
nice.
a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones.
Oh, that's right.
That
That's right.
doesn't feel like a horror,
Yeah, I know.
but um, yeah, that's just what happens, right? Like you never
Yeah,
really know the vibe until you get into it.
exactly.
Next year, next year we'll pick something better in October. November though is The Death of Jane Lawrence, which is
Oh,
another
that's right.
gothic horror. But I've
Yeah.
heard it's like really horror fantasy, like super weird.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'm hoping that it's just like everything that I've ever wanted.
Yeah, yeah. I know it can be so tough. Like, have you been having a lot of success with your book club this year with like enjoying the picks that you've been having?
You know, it's always funny because like I always consistently love the book and my audience hates it or they love it and I hate it.
Oh
So
my
it's always
gosh.
like a weird discussion, which is why I'm so glad that I I didn't take the book club on myself. Like I always have co-hosts. Like that's what's so good about
Yeah,
having this dynamic is there's somebody like bounce things off of because
yeah,
I prefer if everyone on the live has a different opinion. So there's
yeah,
like more to kind of talk
yeah.
about.
That's so true. I know I can't imagine trying to like host something like this alone and just talking about it because I feel like sometimes, yeah, it's like hard to verbalize your thoughts on what you're thinking about books. Like sometimes it's like and then sometimes I'm like I need to talk about this with someone because I have no idea like
Yeah.
how I'm feeling about it. But
I'm so
um,
glad you invited me. Like this was a really good one to get to chat about.
yeah, of course. Thank you so much for joining me. Like this is so awesome. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you guys so much to anybody watching this. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. And I do think this was a really great pick for the book club. There was just so much to talk about with this one. Yeah, and I hope you can join us next month for False Witness. I mean, gosh, hopefully that's one I enjoy. Like, I'm
I
really
hope
nervous.
it's so good.
I know. Have you read it yet? I'm curious, or
No,
not
I don't
yet?
know when I'm going to get to it because November is just like horror now for me.
Yeah,
And
true.
December doesn't feel right for thrillers. So, like, I hope you love it because then, like, I'll read, obviously, like I always do, I'll read some of your favorites in January and
Oh
then
my
it'll
gosh,
just
I
be great.
know. I know, gosh. I'm hoping that that one's like the next Pretty Girls or something. Like, I'm hoping I love it, but we'll see. I've been seeing so many mixed reviews lately, so we'll see. But yeah, so I think that'll be all for this live show. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. I think this was a really awesome discussion, and yeah, thank you so much to Kayla for joining. We will see you very soon.